Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I'm the host of the Association 4.0 podcast. Today, my guest is Michael DiFrisco. Michael is a Chief Marketing Officer at the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. He is also the owner of BrandXcellence, a brand consulting firm. Michael has more than 30 years of experience in helping businesses connect to their target audience, and he's participated in numerous organizational and brand assessments. Welcome, Michael. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Well, thanks for having me, Sherry. Appreciate it.
So tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and your current professional responsibilities.
Sure. Well, I've been in association world really for most of my professional career. So I kind of went from, designer to creative director to then marketing director to chief marketing officer. So my career kind of progressed like that. I started actually in associations with Ducks Unlimited there in suburban Chicago. And then I went to the Experimental Aircraft Association up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Oh, yeah. And I'm currently with the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, like you said. So those are the three associations that I spent most of my career in. And one time I was speaking and somebody said, so let me get this straight. You went from duck wings to airplane wings to bite wings. And I went, actually, yeah, that's what I've done. So now I stole that and I use that sometimes. So.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
So I'm Chief Marketing Officer now at AACD, and I like to think that I play a key role in driving strategy. I mean, I like to make sure that I really fully understand the market and the member. I work hard, I think, to create a unique point of view that will hopefully influence beliefs and behaviors and create demand for our offerings. I mean, it's not just about lead generation, but it's about creating demand for what we do. So, and then as you mentioned in the intro, in my spare time, I enjoy consulting on brand strategy and corporate identity. That's just kind of my passion. So I really do enjoy that.
That's great. So, we've talked before, and I want to have you talk a little bit more about the hands-on at home project that was developed for AACD during the pandemic.
Yeah. So one of the things that makes AACD different when we have our live events, our annual conference, is our hands-on workshops. Mm-hmm. So other organizations and private educators have hands-on workshops, but we do it like a little bit differently, and we have more of them. So there's more opportunity for attendees to really get their hands dirty, to spend time with the instructor, the educator, to learn new techniques, experiment with new materials and methods. But as everybody knows, when you have to cancel 2 annual events in a row because of the pandemic, well, what do you do, right? So we thought about it and we developed a virtual hands-on at home offering. And what was kind of neat about it was that the revenue comes from 2 different sources: the sponsoring entity, who is sponsoring the workshop and providing the attendees with the materials. And then we charge the attendees, AACD members, a nominal fee to actually be one of the people that gets to participate. And of course, attendance was limited so that there could be good instructor, to student ratio. And they were popular enough during the test that it's now an ongoing offering to kind of take the place of, what happens in those other 11 months when we're not having an annual scientific session. Yeah. So hands-on at home kind of, it started out as kind of a Band-Aid because we were missing our annual meeting, but it turned into a persistent offering that we're pretty happy with.
Yeah, well, I think that's great because I think a lot of us saw that we could do things remote that would really stick, because not everybody can make it also at a date at an annual meeting, right? Or make it to that location, or there's things that just happen that now we've got offerings that can reach those that can't be in person. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Great point. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the changes that you guys made to your accreditation program.
Sure. So again, this was kind of, I suppose you could say this was kind of driven by the pandemic as well, but we were looking for ways to help our members who are in the process of accreditation, members in the process, we call them MIPs, to help them kind of get through the process a little more quickly and smartly, because our accredited members and our fellows are our best members. They're the ones who are our best ambassadors, and they're the ones who have the clinical skills to really give their patients, outstanding, long-lasting results. So we want more of them. They're stickier members, right? Their retention rate is much higher than a general member. So we want to shepherd them in as many ways as we can to get through the process. And one of the things that a member dentist or a laboratory technician has to do is pass a number of case types. And so we developed a new offering recently called ACE Your Case. And ACE is kind of an acronym for Accreditation Case Examiners. And one of the examiners will get on a Zoom, meeting. And again, attendance is limited. And they'll walk you through kind of the success principles of passing a case type. So if you're stuck on case type 2, you'd want to go to that ACE Your Case to kind of learn the tips and tricks to pass that case. And what was really kind of neat about that one, when we launched it, we weren't sure how our members would accept this new idea. And we decided we would launch it only to our members in the process of accreditation first, since it's most relevant to them. And before we could even roll it out to our entire membership, we had filled up the course. And we had to duplicate it and do it again just to get more people into it. So kind of like hands-on at home, ACE Your Case is now part of our portfolio of educational offerings. So we're excited about that.
I love that, and I love the ACE Your Case. That's clever. I love that. So talk to me. I noticed, Michael, that you use the phrase radical branding in your promotional materials. So what is a radical brand, and how do organizations get there? Yeah.
So that was something I developed years ago, and the word radical actually has a double meaning. So the first is that it's not good enough just to be a little bit different than your competition. You need to be radically different. You have to be giving your target audience a reason to choose you over all the other options that are out there and available to them. And you'll only get their attention if you're radically differentiated. So that's kind of the first meaning. But I also use radical in some of my presentations and books as an acronym. So the R in radical stands for relevance, right? People have to care about your products and services. So your offerings have to be meaningful and relevant to them. I remember reading years ago that hardware stores don't really sell drill bits and saw blades, right? They sell holes and cuts. They're selling the results of what the tool does. And I thought that was cool, but it wasn't radical enough for me. So I developed this exercise where if my product is drill bits and saw blades, it's not about holes and cuts. It's really about the feeling of accomplishment that I get when I fix something or make something or repair something. So
I love that.
So that to me is kind of how you stay relevant, is having offerings that are meaningful to your target audience. I work with a lot of dentists, of course, and one of the things I tell them is you're not selling smile design or orthodontics or bonding or veneers. You're selling hope and self-confidence and happiness. That's what your real product is, and that's how you stay relevant. So the R in radical is for relevance. The A is for authenticity. And the way I like to think about authenticity is your prospects, your prospective members, in the case of associations, are going to subject every claim you make to two tests. Is this claim plausible? And is it plausible coming from you? And so that's about being authentic and true to yourself and not being a copycat Me Too association or organization. So that's authenticity. The D in radical is for differentiation. And that's kind of the big one, right? And that's, like I said, about owning a unique attribute. And I consider having that, you've maybe heard it called a unique sales proposition, but it's the most powerful tool in marketing. So discover a pain point that no one else in your marketplace is resolving for, and integrate that promise into everything you do. And that's your differentiation factor. I love to do this little test. It's actually kind of hard, but if you can fill in these two blanks kind of almost intuitively, you probably have a pretty good differentiator, and that is our association is the only blank that blanks. Our association is the only blank that blanks. And so I'll go ahead and use AACD. Our association is the only aesthetic dental organization that has a credential, an advanced credential. So that's our differentiating factor, right? So that's kind of the D in radical. The I in radical is for iconic, and that's just the visuals. So not just your logo, but other visual elements of your brand, the imagery that you use, the colors, the typography, right? Visuals have an emotional power that words alone don't. And it often acts as kind of the glue that sticks memories and brands into our mind. So you want to be an iconic brand as well. The C in radical is making sure that it's actually 3 C's, Sherry, making sure that your character, your conduct, and your conversation are all in alignment. So your character, who you are, what you stand for, your conduct, how you act, how you and your leadership and your staff acts, and your conversation, what you say in the marketplace, in your marketing, in your social spaces, they all need to be in alignment. Otherwise, you'll be a confusing kind of schizophrenic brand. So character, conduct, and conversation in alignment is the C. The A in radical is, the second A, is for audience. So think about who your best fit members are. Who is your association designed to serve? And here's where I like to share kind of the positioning paradox, because it's so counterintuitive that people get confused when they hear it. But the narrower your association's focus is, the wider your message can actually spread. And it's kind of the opposite of all things to all people. So what's that narrow message that you can be about, that differentiator, so that your target audience can grab that and claim it, and embrace it. And then finally, the L in radical is for live it. Just, how consistently you present your brand is going to either strengthen your association or weaken it, depending on how you, your staff, your volunteers kind of embody and embrace this idea of living the brand every day. So the L in radical is live it.
I love that. You've given me some inspiration already. I took a couple notes here. I'm like, this is great. Great stuff. So how do you feel like organizations can get there and do this? It's like, all I'm hearing is everybody's so busy and they're just trying to kind of get through the day. How do you organizations really kind of, be able to implement or think about all the things that you just talked about?
I think it starts with being purposeful and, not falling into kind of the old ways. Well, this is how we always did it, or this is what associations are supposed to do. I think it's taking a good look, in the mirror and understanding who you really are. And I think it goes back to this fundamental idea that I've had stuck in my head for a while now that I really like. And I find it kind of helpful to recalibrate by stepping back and asking the question, what problem are we here to solve? Why do we exist? What problem are we here to solve? And I think that's the first step in kind of stepping back from the day to day. Oh gosh, we got to get this newsletter out and we got to prepare for this conference and just step back. What problem are we here to solve? Now, our benefits, our offerings, our products, our services, are they all, resolving for that problem?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit, I was talking to another the other day about how things have changed over the last couple of years. And basically, a lot of, people aren't really as focused and paying attention, and they've got multiple things going on when they're, on Zoom or working from home, and, looking at their phones and all those types of things that have changed a bit. So when we think about branding, how do you feel that branding has changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big one. I did read something recently. I'll paraphrase it because I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said something to the effect of, it's as if the pandemic kind of squeezed 10 years of change of results kind of into the last couple of years. So everything that we deal with, whether it's, membership trends or whether it's branding or whatever, has been compressed or even like accelerated.
Yeah.
So think of like an important trend line in your organization. Let's say that back in 2018, 2019, you started to notice, let's say, your retention rate was softening. And if you think of that trend line continuing out for about 10 years, where would you be? Well, the last 2 years kind of, like I said, accelerated or compressed all those trends. And now all of a sudden associations are going, holy mackerel, what happened here?
Yeah.
So what that says to me is your strategic position, like I said, what you say and how you say it, your relevant, authentic, and differentiated brand promise, it's more important than ever to help cut through the clutter and the noise of the marketplace. Like you said, people are distracted. Their buying habits have changed, how they spend money, how associations operate and thrive, how we find and retain employees has changed, and everything has shifted and compressed over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So do you feel our associations are doing well or not so well with their brand initiatives today?
Yeah, I think that it falls into, at least in my reading and kind of observing laterally, other dental organizations, let's say, it's the difference between organizations that are comfortable being kind of a Me Too organization, doing all the normal things associations are supposed to do. They might be living in the past, might be focused on celebrating milestones or anniversaries or whatever. They could have we've always done it this way mentality, like I said, but when we think about true member needs, we got to remember that often prospects are unable to determine value, right? So we get stuck using outdated communication styles. We carry around an outdated brand. And think about these upcoming generations, these young people, they're asking fundamental questions like, what the heck's an association?
Yeah.
Why would I want to join something? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't have the time or the money for this. And the one that we're starting to hear in some survey instruments is your benefits don't align with my needs, which to me is shorthand for I can get it elsewhere. So why should I be a part of this thing? Yeah. So I think that's where associations might fall or trip, is getting hung up in those areas. And like I said, maybe going back to this question of what problem are we here to solve and how can we help, those people?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, our team, we were doing it, helping an organization with evaluating whether or not they should develop a product. And anyway, in those conversations, we were doing interviews and they were talking with young physicians. And shockingly, the physician associations would have, their guidelines of care, right? Like, and that was the go-to. You went to the guidelines. Well, we found out that a lot of these young physicians were getting their medical information from TikTok. And I was like, oh, that can't be true. I was like, that cannot be true. Well, I'm following them now. And I'm learning to be a doctor from TikTok. No, don't put me in any operating room. But I'm, it is that it's fascinating just to see the changes in behaviors, and then how do we compete with that, right? And what is that value to, as you said, what is that value of membership and the value of the association? And I think today people are starting to recognize that they need to do things differently. they need to kind of start thinking, being innovative and thinking differently. But sometimes organizations, when they're having problems, they just say, we're going to just rebrand. Like, we're going to rebrand, we're going to change our messaging. And, I guess I want to hear kind of your feedback on, what's the right time to rebrand? What do you get out of a rebrand initiative? And maybe even if that's the right solution.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do hear that quite a bit in my work, but it reminds me of this conversation I had with an association executive pretty recently. And she said that in a survey that they had done, their members said that, I think it was an attitude and awareness survey, but said that their members perceive the organization as cutting edge, high performance, innovative. They were using attributes like that. But their logo, which I refer to as kind of the doorway to the brand, and even their overall look and feel, like their website and their imagery, it did not reflect cutting edge, high performance, innovative at all. So, it was dated, it was old fashioned, and that was kind of a wake up call to them to say, hey, we're not aligned with what people perceive us as. So listen to the voice of your member. What attributes do they think of when they visualize your organization, and are those aligned, with your current brand? So what I hear a lot in my consulting is people want to rebrand because they want to shake off an old image, like I just said, when they want to tap into a new demographic, when they're shifting or changing their position in the marketplace, give new life to like outdated branding, kind of just refresh, and when they need to evolve to stay relevant. So I think those are the reasons that I hear most often. And again, we're not talking about just a logo refresh here.
Right.
It digs much deeper into who your organization serves, what you stand for, your competitive advantage, your marketplace positioning, which is always done against the competition. If they're zigging, you need to zag. And then all that groundwork is most often followed by an update to the corporate mark and other, key visuals. But it's not just about let's freshen up our logo and call it a rebrand. That's just a logo design.
Yeah. So what do you think that leaders can do to create a strong brand identity?
Yeah. Here's one way that I like to look at it is all brands need good parents. And that's because, especially in association world, it's the people who shape the association and kind of carry the core values and the culture. So when you think of, the executive director, the staff, volunteer leadership, all of their values are the association's values, no matter what the mission statement might say, right? So your association brand really can only be as strong as the weakest personal point in the organization. And that's why back to the radical branding construct, the L at the end stands for live the brand every day in everything you do and say. And hey, that's a rhyme, and I might have to use that. Live the brand every day in everything you do and say.
Look at that. Michael, I've been following you for years, and your concept of radical branding, and I've seen you speak a lot of different places, and I think you're a great leader in the association industry. And I guess for our audience, I just kind of want to hear a little bit about your leadership style and how you've come to develop these characteristics.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that I think of when you say that is that I'm never the smartest person in the room. So I really love to get input and feedback and ideas from the people around me. So while in a given situation, I might be the ultimate decision maker, let's say, I think that the wisdom actually comes from a multitude of counselors. So, and I guess I was just thinking about this recently at our board meetings, but I feel I must have somewhere along the line embraced a servant leadership type model, because I was thinking about the typical view of leadership, climbing the ladder, reaching the top, getting to the top of the pyramid. So envision that pyramid for a second with the leaders at the tip, right? Your board chair, your CEO, they're at this tip of this pyramid. And below them is a layer of, let's say, volunteers and board members and committee members. And then there's staff. And then below that, at the base of the pyramid, are the association's members. But that's totally upside down. You need to flip the pyramid on its head for a much more accurate picture of how it should really work, right? Leaders are at the bottom. We exist to serve our staff, our volunteers, and of course the members. They're at the real top of the pyramid. So in my mind, the leader's role then is really, I don't know, nothing more than taking care of the people in our charge, to grow them, to support their personal and professional development. So I guess that would be kind of my thought.
Yeah, I love how you describe that, because I'll always say, you know, we do work with like website redesign work, and you'll have a leadership group that's involved trying to drive it. And I'm like, but you guys think differently than the rank and file membership, and who are we here to serve, right? So when you pointed out, but I like your pyramid analogy, like that's really good. And it made me think also of Michael. It was funny, before I became a consultant, and I've been doing consulting now for 17 years, but you talk about getting to the top of the pyramid. And I always said, you know, by the time I got to the table, I was like, this table sucks. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. like this is not fun.
I chose the wrong pyramid.
Yeah, exactly. So has becoming an entrepreneur made an impact on what you bring in your association role? I would expect that it has significantly, but talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, that makes me think of something that I heard when I graduated art school. It was, you know, it's probably not even a true story, but it might be an apocryphal kind of a story. But if you, back in the old days, if you were to get a job, let's say at a big animation studio like Disney or something, you would have a very specific role. Your role is you draw Mickey Mouse's hands. That's what your job is. You just draw Mickey's hands, become an expert at it, do it very, very well. And you're part of this big team that puts together the whole animated story. And I think what is neat about entrepreneurship is you get this much broader vision of how things work, you know, and it gives you a different perspective. So I'm not just focused in my job on the marketing role. I'm not just focused on drawing Mickey's hands. I have, I think, a more holistic view of how the organization works and functions and how it fits together, and how, you know, the finance and the budgeting is supposed to operate, and how these various departments, from our conference to our accreditation department, all fit together. And I think it just gives you more of an appreciation for all the different parts of what goes into this animated story, from the music to the backgrounds to the sound effects, you know, to everything that goes into it. So I think that's probably what I think of when I think of entrepreneurship, or intrapreneurship, I guess.
That's great. That also just reminded me of when I worked at the association. I was responsible for business development, and my boss, who's still a really good friend of mine, I used to always hassle him because he was a CFO. And I said, Tom, I make the money, I don't count the money. And then I became an entrepreneur, and I called him one day and I'm like, crap, why didn't you make me count the money? I was like, I hate this QuickBooks thing. So it was kind of funny, because you're right. It's like that holistic view of everything that's going on in an organization that you have to be responsible for. That's great. So Michael, can you talk to us a little bit about how you feel organizations can distinguish themselves in this competitive environment, and also even maybe talk a little bit about the advantages of being a specialty?
Yeah, I think what you're probably getting at here is this idea of focus, right? So, it was a couple days ago. Yeah, we had Jersey Mike's subs, and I was thinking about subs and what makes you go from one sub restaurant to the other. I mean, so if you think about sub sandwiches, they're all essentially the same, right? You put meats and veggies on some bread. So how do those restaurants cut through the clutter? And to me, it's about having a relevant area of focus to rally around, or like you said, specialty. So maybe we can use those words, you know, interchangeably. But, you know, for Cousins subs, it's the bread. Their tagline is better bread, better subs. So they talk about the bread. For Subway, it's this whole idea of fresh, eat fresh. So they want you to have that idea in your mind when you're selecting that. For Jimmy John's, it's all about speed, right? Sub so fast you'll freak, freaky fast delivery. Now, I never thought that speed was a pain point in the sub sandwich world, but apparently they found something to focus on. So again, it's back to this idea that what your organization does better, or even better than better, what is it that your organization does differently from other solutions that your members are using? And then how can you leverage that difference to make an impact in the marketplace? And sometimes it's just about picking that area of focus and just talking about that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. And in my brain, like if you think about it, freaky fast. Well, if I need something fast, I'm going to Jimmy John's, and I don't even think about the competitors. And they probably could make the sandwich in the same amount of time. Right?
Probably, right. And the meat's probably fresh, and they probably have good bread.
Exactly.
You know, so, yeah.
Exactly. So what advice would you give association leaders to succeed over the next few years?
Yeah, so I think, again, just building off what we were just talking about, I mean, it's about finding new ways to express your competitive advantage and make it oversimplified. You know, you don't want to make it too hard. You know, freaky fast is a great one to go back to, because it's an oversimplified message, and that gives your prospects and your members kind of new reasons to find your solution relevant, beneficial, valuable to them. One of the early books that I read when I was really doing a deep dive into branding was a book called Brand Simple. And the author said, if you want to win, you must know what you're selling, find a way to prove that what you're selling is different, and then distill that difference into a focused and compelling idea that can drive and unite everything associated with your brand. So it's this idea of focusing, distilling, you know, having a specialty area, and then distilling that into all your marketing and messaging.
So I've picked your brain a lot today, which I really appreciate. This has been terrific. But I have one last question. Do you think that the AACD's business model will change in the future? Are you guys kind of looking at a different business model, or if not, why not?
Yeah, honestly, I think it has to change. I mean, the organization's been around for about 40 years, but think about the landscape in the dental industry, or a lot of the industries that associations serve. I mean, it's changed dramatically. It's not the same industry that AACD was born in. So just last week, we had our two boards in town in Madison for our strategic planning session. And one of the things I shared with the boards in their pre-board packet was a quote that I stumbled across. But it was this senior television executive, and he was quoted in Fortune magazine in 1998. So calibrate yourself with 1998. And this is what this TV executive said. He said, "This is a dying business, and very few people involved want to admit that the patient is sick. Everyone's going after the same writers, the same concepts, the same audience. They're programming themselves out of business." And I thought that was a really cool challenge, because think about what happened then as we went into the new millennium, into the 2000s and beyond. All of a sudden, it was satellite and cable and streaming and all these different boutique networks. And you mentioned TikTok, but I mean, look at YouTube, how big it is. And TV has fundamentally changed. How we consume our entertainment has totally changed since then. And it took kind of, I think, maybe a wake-up call like that. So, again, it might shake leadership up to think differently, to shed this is the way we've always done it kind of mindset, to dig deep, to get strategic, ask tough questions, be innovative. So it was a really great double board meeting and strategic planning session. And I think the board's prepared to do that. So we might be looking at some really exciting changes over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that is exciting. We have our, I know you just spoke at our innovation summit, which we really appreciated, and that was great. And we have our Solutions Day that is coming up in September, and our headliner is going to be Tiffany Hayes from the Country Music Association. And she was talking to us about how radio is going to be going away, kind of the same thing, and how they're kind of helping their members, and they're looking at what the future looks like over the next 10 years. And you don't really that's not top of mind for me to think, but then you take a step back and you're like, well, yeah, if you look at the younger generations or even us, we're not necessarily getting our music through radio anymore, right? And so how does that change? But I think that the point is as you said, in every industry, those things are happening. And sometimes some of these industries, people are paying attention and need to look at, how do they help their members and how do they change their business models to help their members. And other organizations don't take that pause to say, what is changing in our environment and what do we need to be, looking at. So I think that is a really important point.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
So, well, thank you so much for your great advice today. Your ideas and perspectives on how marketing and branding has changed so quickly is a terrific to have this update on from you today. And we appreciate our listeners tuning in and hope you enjoyed the episode.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.